So we're going to
Oh, this
pick up on the conversation that we've been having off and on for last week or so on municipal regulation of agriculture. And just to remind everybody, we had yesterday we had from Ledge Council just a little bit of language showing what would the status quo look like if we were to draft language to bring us back to that. And we've also heard from the agency, and we've heard from some of the farmer groups, and both of those entities have been working since last spring, with the League of Cities and Towns on this issue. So we wanted to also hear from the league and have Josh Hanford in, who I'm not sure if you've been in the committee before, Josh.
We haven't. Typically, we're not in this committee.
Maybe not even in this part of the building, right? So if you'd like to, maybe we can do a quick round of introductions, and I'll let you introduce yourselves. And we've got, I think that we've got 40 minutes on the agenda. We actually have a little more time if you need more time. We are a committee that likes to ask questions. So it could, even without your intent, we could run long. So
Great.
But I am David Durfee. I chair the committee. I represent Shaftesbury, Sunderland, and Glastonbury down in Bennington County. John?
John Bartholomew from Heartland, also representing Windsor and West Windsor.
John O'Brien, heard you talking about the White River. We're on the first branch. I represent Boylston and Michael Meadow Tunbridge.
Frank Burke, represent Cabot Long Beach.
Michelle Boslin, Westminster, Rockingham, and Brooklyn.
Jed Lipsky, Lamoille One, Stowe.
Richard Nelson, Chief Fryer. Derby.
Jed, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just, let's say approximately 43.5% of this committee had a presentation by our guests and presenters this morning, and they not knowing how engaged we were in the Taft Street decision impacts and how far down the road we are. I just, for their sake, so I think.
Sorry, Jed, you're referring to the rural caucus this morning?
Correct, this morning.
And that some of the people in this room were in that.
Three of us.
Yes, okay, good.
So anyway, I think, we have a lot to share. And just so we look forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Forward to questions.
Josh,
Right here.
Oh, thank you.
Running low on power already, geez. So for the record, Josh Hanford,
Oh, that's fine.
I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Relations at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I've been there for about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I was a Housing and Community Development Commissioner at the Department of Housing and Community Development for a long time, and Community Development Director before that. And before that, actually worked in the resource conservation and development world with conservation districts and NRCS and agritourism and Vermont farms, and did some agriculture work in the state. And I live in Randolph Center.
My name is Samantha Sheehan. I'm the Municipal Policy and Advocacy Specialist for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I've been with the league a little over a year, so this is my second session. Most immediately before that, I worked as a communications director for the city of Burlington. However, I am not a Burlingtonian, never was a Burlingtonian. I actually also live on the White River, right at the headwaters in Hancock.
So obviously, the Vermont Supreme Court decision in May 30th sort of changed the landscape out there for all of us, as a result of the case in Essex Junction, and sort of upended sort of longstanding precedent of what municipalities could or couldn't do as far as regulating agriculture through zoning. And we worked with the Agency of Ag very cooperatively throughout the summer and fall to try to see if we could align our positions, knowing that likely there was going to be legislation, desire to fix things. I would say we got very close, just coming at it from different perspectives, as far as trying to reduce those, the conflicts that do arise when you have neighbors living close to each other and you have parts of the state that have been designated as areas to grow with housing targets from the state down to the regional level, and a number of recent zoning preemptions that require up to 20 units per acre of housing in these areas that have water and sewer, and know that that's where we're going to have the most conflict with competing land uses. And so we came at this from different perspectives. We're going to talk to you about what our position is, how we arrived at it, and then how we think really the interplay with Act 181 and that implementation is really sort of where the biggest impacts on rural lands, what that can be done with it, how property values may change, and how development pressures are going to play out in this transformational process we're underway right now, and really attempt to show you how much time and how much thought is going to go into a municipality seeking areas and getting approval for areas that are exempt from Act 250, which is the primary area we want to focus on agriculture regulation from the municipal perspective, because we really have no desire to regulate agriculture. In most of Vermont, 2/3 of our municipalities are under 2,500 population. Many of them have select board members that are farmers and participate in this process, and really don't want to do anything that would make farming harder in communities. They're business owners, they're property taxpayers, and employers, and certainly don't want to impact them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Samantha to kind of run through this, interrupt us at any point with questions. And we do have a lot of content, but as you said, some of you've seen, and we have plenty of time to take your questions.
I'll add to that I'll learn, this is our third time sort of delivering this position, so I'm going to learn from that. Where we agree with the Agency of Ag is that in the vast majority of contexts and over the majority of the land area in the state, it's appropriate for farms to continue to be regulated by the agency and to be exempt from municipal zoning. We also agree that regardless, every homeowner, renter, Vermonter, visitor should have the right to grow food in the place that they live. So that's where we agree. If I could kind of characterize the error between our positions and what we're asking to be done, where the Agency of Agriculture is able to support municipal authorities sort of has to do with the intensity of farming, the size and intensity of the farming activity. Where we are asking for authority is not based off the intensity of farming at all, or the size or acreage, or the existing structures. It's actually on the intensity of the mixed use zoning district, the highest density district that has the most diverse types of land uses happening in them. And so for that reason, Act 181 is really important to understand. That's really what drives our position as an organization. So we're going to walk backwards from there to what we're asking to be done. Real quickly, since this is our first time before the committee, VLCT is a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan organization created in 1967 to strengthen local government in Vermont. We are not the only folks who work there. We actually have a pretty large staff that provides high touch one-on-one support for all municipal officials. So every Vermont municipality is a part of VLCT, and all town officials are a member. So staff, employees, part-time, full-time, appointed folks like planning commission members, and then elected officials such as select board members and mayors. And these are some of the services we provide, which includes legal counsel, confidential, free legal advice from our experienced municipal law attorneys.
You said, and I didn't realize this, not surprising, I guess, that every town in the state is a member of the LCT. Is that through choice or is there some, are they obligated to be?
No, they choose and they pay a membership. Yeah, they pay dues sort of based on like a per capita dues system. And then we also are the insurer for currently all but two. That either self-insure or use a combination of private insurance, but we operate an insurance pool,
Not health insurance,
not health insurance.
business insurance or whatever you would call it.
Liability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the buildings and,
Infrastructure.
workers' comp claim for their staff and,
Mhm.
Town of Lowell, Town Barrage.
Mhm.
And yeah, and if you go to, like, I've been to our select board meetings and sometimes they're pulling VLCT out like Marshall Dillon pulled his Colt. We gotta get a hold of Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns and get this clarified.
We help clerks and treasurers. We have a new team of governmental finance specialists that help with budgeting, the preparation of bonds, going to vote. Public service is town business in Vermont. Town business is the LCT's business in Vermont.
You help listeners?
Yep. Yep. Zoning administrators. Yep. We have 2 annual meetings a year for planning and zoning.
Representative O'Brien?
I just wondered if you represent other municipalities like the, like solid waste sort of districts.
that's a great question. A lot of those
In a way.
are what we call affiliate members.
Yeah.
Water districts, fire and water districts, the solid waste districts, the RPCs.
RCDs.
They are affiliate members. They receive some benefits, but they're not voting members because they're not a municipality incorporated the way that governs. They're set up to have some of those authorities to, but yes and no.
I'm glad you brought up voting members. Our policy is not created by Josh and I. It's created by our members. So we have, before every biennium, we have a member-driven policy setting process. Every town gets 1 vote. All present and voting unanimously supported our 2025-2026 policies. And then this one we're about to reveal to you was amended by the board following the Supreme Court decision and is actually a pretty significant departure from 50 years of the LCT's position, which has been really strictly in favor of local authority and only local authority. For us to say we want 97% of the state to be regulated by the state when it comes to farms is a big change from what the organization has advocated for in the past. A little bit, our communities, you serve them, you live in them. But when it comes to forms of government, they vary widely from town to town and city to city in Vermont. So about 73% of our membership communities have 2,500 or less residents. 66 only out of 251 have a town or city manager. So the majority of our members are run by elected volunteers. Only 8 have mayors, 2 are strong mayor, which is kind of like a governor. Mini governor. Those are Burlington and Rutland. So we largely work sort of for the legislative body in rural communities that have very limited capacity to meet the obligations of local government. So this is our position. This is what we're asking for legislative resolve for in this session, which is to exempt agriculture activity from municipal regulation statewide, except for in Act 250 exempted areas. The path to Act 250 exempted areas comes from Act 181. They have been used as synonymous with the designated growth areas or what the new law calls the FLUs, future land uses. That's not true. There is a long statutorily defined public process under state authority that creates the exempt status. It's not the same thing as the eligible areas, which we'll explain more about. This total eligible area is currently projected at a month ago, it was 3%. It's now 2.1%. So the total acreage of the state of Vermont, 2.1% of that is eligible for Act 250 exemption pending the process that we'll talk you through in a minute. And this is an ongoing live process that's happening. It started last month in December with regional plans, and it will, in theory, by law, conclude by December of this year.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about this morning, but we're getting pinched on time. Tier 1B. Town of Derby does not have a city center or village center per se, but they have a lot of land suitable for designated growth areas. And so I'm assuming that would be in Tier 1B. And Tier 1B, because Derby has a robust town plan and whatnot, would that be considered exempt from Act 250?
So does Derby have zoning, permanent zoning?
Yes.
Okay, so the law, Act 181 prescribes that to be Tier 1B eligible, a town has to have a duly adopted municipal plan, permanent zoning, flood hazard zoning consistent with 3 different state statutes, water and sewer or suitable soils for large-scale septic, capacity to administer zoning, so DRB and a zoning administrator or a subcontractor, and one other thing.
I think those are the main
Those are the
areas.
5.
And the second part of your question is, they would only be exempt from Act 250 for housing.
Up to
Housing
50
only and up to
units.
50 units. And one of the nuances here we're going to show is as you map these areas, the RPC, the town, agriculture is already exempt from Act 250.
Yeah,
Why would you map in agricultural areas in these new areas designated for growth that you're seeking Act 250 for new development?
Well, so that brings the point. If you're familiar with the town of Derby at all, it is shallow development off from Route 5. There's a couple thousand developments, not many. Derby Line Village being the exception, which is surrounded by some of the arguably the best soils in the state. The same up in off the village of Derby Center. Some of the best soils in the state are there. Highly septic system ready. Matter of fact, you go down Route 111, I believe that's all septic system down through there. It's also where we farm the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So would we be, if that was deemed 1B, which they can, we're not enticed to sell, but there are other areas in town that should be in 1B. Would that make us, would we fall under zoning for our agricultural activity?
Only if the town chose to adopt new regulations on farm. None of what we're presenting is automatic.
I understand. I'm using Derby as an example. I'm not so worried about Derby. But I'm worried about other communities because your best development soils are prime ag lands.
Mhm.
There's no sense arguing about that. We know that to all be true. I mean, it's harder to develop in clay, especially with A&R calling everything with a fern in it a wetland.
I think
I think let's pause, but I think what we hope, the reason, the description you gave us of your community, which sounds a lot like mine, there are reasons why the municipality would want to not include parcels in. Remember, the purpose of this process for the municipality is Act 250 exemption. Ag land is Act 250 exempt. Conserved land has no potential for development to meet housing targets. prime ag soil has other suitable priority land uses. The area that the community process, the statutory community-led process, is, so the area that is mapped by that process is for development, and it is suitable for development, and it is seeking Act 250 exemption. So there are good reasons why a sensible planning commission over an 18 to 36 month process would not include existing ag lands. And to be clear, if we did receive this authority in an Act 250 exempt area that did include an existing farm with existing farm structures, they're fine. They already exist. It's just like how existing 5-plex housing units may not be able to be built today under the municipal zoning. They still exist. They can still be rented. They can still have people living in them. They're still connected to the sewer.
So this, an existing farm structure doesn't need to go, no one needs to come in after permission because it's already there.
It's there. It's just non-conforming.
Grandfather, non-conforming.
Most of the structures we have in the state are non-conforming to both state and municipal
Most of them were
regulation.
built before any of these zoning laws exist, and
Yeah,
that wouldn't change.
And two other things. First of all, would you come up to the town of Derby and give this talk to our select board? Because they're trying to wrap their heads around it. They really are. And, or should I get David Snevick from the Ember?
We could follow up on that
We'll
for
follow
sure,
up.
because we might be doing a very in-depth dive on this
Yeah.
issue in this coming spring, like probably April, that the town of Derby would have an open invitation to come and work with all the other towns, because we think what's going on with Act 181 is critically important for municipalities to understand
yeah.
what their future is gonna look like if this law goes forward.
No, 100% agree. Second point I want to make. So we talked about buildings. What about zoning, like hours of operation? Because existing farm or agricultural entity, they feed their cows at 4 o'clock in the morning because it takes till noon. And, would a farm be subject, like a gravel pit, like gravel pit can only operate between 7 and 5. That's something that's a very big concern to myself and probably several, if not all, the committee.
That's a important and complicated question because there's so zoning regulates land use, building and structures and land use. Ordinance, if you have zoning, you can have ordinance. Ordinance in some communities, although frankly very few, can regulate things such as noise, hours of operation for different types of establishments, commonly bars and restaurants, or those that have event permits, things like that. And then there is also something called, we have nuisance law already. So it's like, what comes first?
Well,
It has a presumptive rebuttal. So if there's, again, an existing dairy farm
Yeah,
that's
presumptive.
always operating at 4 a.m. and has the lights on and cows moving in and out, and then a competing neighboring land use happens later, that farm has that presumptive rebuttal. The same way a fire station does, which is also very annoying to live next to. Or a 24-hour laundromat does as well. So that's not unique to agricultural activity. That's just part of land use law in Vermont.
I just asked you, sorry, is it okay if I interrupt
yeah,
you?
go ahead.
Just because, top of our minds yesterday, when we were discussing this in terms of nuisance, was the bill that we updated
Exactly.
last year involving, nuisance, involving neighbors. And so not municipalities,
Butters, yeah.
just, the right of a neighbor or extent to which a neighbor could, file a legal claim. Are you talking about something different here?
No, that's the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. Which does, I guess my point is, that's not zoning. Yeah, but there's ordinance which can regulate the activities of all businesses and residents to an extent through ordinance, and then zoning is the use. So if you're building a structure, does it conform to the local regulation for setbacks, for building height, for exterior lighting, for sometimes fences? You have to be able to see through X% of the fence, right? For road safety and pedestrian safety. And that the reason there is a municipal interest in having that regulatory authority is for public safety and to prevent these abutter conflicts, which encumber the municipality, gets caught up in appeals and lawsuits, and that is a drain of public resources. And and farms, of course, experience that if they're the subject of the appeal or the lawsuit. And it's to allow these land use it as agriculture and housing and commercial and civic to exist together in a cooperative way that supports the whole health of the community, that has safe streets, that pedestrians can use safely, that visitors can use safely, that delivery trucks can make it in and out, right? Like that is the point of what we're asking for. And only in these very small, important central growth areas, which now we'll go on to. So
sorry, I want to make sure that, because there were a couple of hands up here. Did you get to finish your question?
No, that you had the same question I did. Perfect.
Representative O'Brien? you-
Same thing. I mean, the one question I wanted to ask now is that in Tunbridge, I'm on the select board, we do not have any zoning in town, but we can still do ordinances, right? So it's, you don't necessarily need zoning in order to have a noise ordinance, right?
correct.
Correct.
Yeah, but you can have an ordinance for the purpose of enforcing components of your zoning and your municipal plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's the sort of.
So, like-
enforcement arm of zoning.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's how zoning is enforced.
Right.
Yeah. So Act 181 creates location-based jurisdiction of Act 250. We are in the implementation process of Act 181 now. It creates 3 tiers, but really it's 4 tiers. And then there's a 5th jurisdictional trigger called the road rule. 1A is total Act 250 exemption. Act 250 does not apply. Only the municipal zoning applies. 1B is Act 250 exemption for housing up to 50 units. 2 is in theory Act 250 as usual, triggered the way it was before, 5, 5 years, 5 miles, 10 units of housing. It creates a new tier 3, which is based off of the mapping of resources of statewide importance. And then there's the road rule, which is jurisdictional, starting 800 feet off of an existing road. The road rule starts this July, barring legislative intervention, which we are requesting. We do not think the state or communities or property owners are prepared for the road rule to take effect this July.
Thank you.
Tier 3 is being mapped by the LURB, the Land Use Review Board. Tier 1 is being mapped by the RPCs. And tier 2 is what's left over from those processes concluding. So this is what one of the,
Before you,
Are-
sorry,
yes.
fine. Did you have a question for Representative?
Yeah, several actually. So going back to this grandfathered farm that might be in one of these areas.
Sure.
If that farm is sold, you've got this historic use and suddenly it's sold and it might then have a different use. Would that all of a sudden its grandfathered status be gone?
no. It's still a non-conforming structure. This happens with all types of structures. for all uses.
It's often said, we could not rebuild any of the cities we have in Vermont with the current zoning. It's very true. You could not recreate Montpelier because the new zoning wouldn't allow what's built here to be built. So you can't undo that with even a change in ownership. Those structures exist. The uses of them may be different. Those uses may be impacted by some ordinance. If the farm turns into a nightclub and the nightclub's having parties all night long, maybe there's an ordinance to control the noise.
It's not a farm then.
Right, but the structures can't be impacted from a new zoning ordinance. A new zoning that would be applied to that area of town.
At the point of redevelopment, it would be subject. So if you're asked, if you do what we asked, which is allow municipal regulation to apply in Act 250 exempt areas, if they adopt it, if the town adopts it. So let's give me a town to use that has zoning and bylaw and sewer, Rutland. Okay, so Rutland City. So if Rutland City has tier 1A and there is an existing building, a mushroom cultivator moves in, they have a farm designation from the agency, and they're operating in an existing building in Rutland as a mushroom cultivator. And then they want to redevelop the building to add height and density on the lot, to create public parking. They want to open it up. They're going to start also serving food and become a restaurant. And they're going to make an adaptive reuse of that existing structure for other new purposes of the building as a farm. They would have to go through a municipal permitting process to get their adaptive reuse zoning permit, which, if that business was not a mushroom cultivator, but was a brewery and went through the same path, had a commercial brewing operation in an existing non-conforming building in the city of Rutland, and then wanted to make an adaptive reuse of the building to add a restaurant and a parking lot, they would have to go to the city of Rutland and get an adaptive reuse permit.
The answer to the question.
No, I know what your question is.
So let's use an example. Say there's a farm that's been now surrounded by development. It's a longstanding farm. Farmer passes away. The children inherit the farm. No interest in farming. It sits there for 5 years as not a farm. And then suddenly a farmer comes in and buys it and wants to take up farming again. Would then, because it's in one of these tiers, the municipality say, no, you can't do that now?
Only if they build something. This is, if they build something.
Well, at farm, they could build something, but it could be a farm again. So it was farm, not farm, farm again.
Are they building a new structure or are they just repurposing the existing buildings and now have a new farm determination letter from the Agency of Agriculture?
This by the farmers, you could build farm buildings. If you're designated as a farm under the RAPs, you can build buildings.
That was
Is that-
the common interpretation of the law prior to the Supreme Court decision.
Right.
And so what we're proposing is that basically stay the same, except in these Act 250 exempt areas. So that
Even an existing farm that needs to build a new barn can't do it.
can do it according to the regulation if it exists,
Municipal
the
regulation.
municipal regulation.
If it's in a tier 1 area.
Yeah, is what
We
we're
haven't-
proposing. But yeah, so I think it would be maybe productive at this point to look at what is this area? And how do we get it? How does it become created? Because it doesn't currently exist. So this is a representation of one of the FLU maps that's created by the RPC. So in the pink donut, the 3 pink colors in the middle of Pittsford, that represents the existing prior village center, the planned growth area, and the new village area. Which if Pittsford chose, the reason I chose Pittsford is because Pittsford already has and has had for a long time a lot of the stuff and the characteristics that in theory Act 181 allows Pittsford to leverage for new housing growth in the future. So they have a 5-person select board, they have professional municipal staff, including planners, they have municipal water and sewer, and they have permanent zoning and bylaw already. And if they wanted to, they could continue working towards Act 250 exemption through this 181 process. So the RPC, the Rutland Regional Planning Commission, has created this map through a many months long process. And now this map is before the Land Use Review Board to affirm or deny the regional plan, including this Act 250. It's so confusing to say, but it's eligible. This pink area is not Act 250 exempt. It is the total area eligible for Act 250 exemption later, right? And I wanted to point out that in this regional mapping process, ag and forestry and conserved lands are considered and mapped. Like the town and Rutland RPC know where these existing, they don't know perfectly, but they generally know where existing agricultural activity is happening, as well as forestry lands and land under all sorts of conservation covenant and easement.
There's even mapped area within the pink area
Yeah.
that is carved out.
So this is the Rutland Regional Planning Commission map of Pittsford that creates the maximum eligible area that could be Act 250 exempt in the future. Then remember our 3 tiers that are really 4 plus the road rule. So on the right side of your screen is the current tier 3 draft map of the same area in Pittsford. So you can see me moving my mouse, right? Okay. So the pink, there is actually pink in Pittsford is right there. That represents a significant natural community, which is basically like an endangered species, plant or animal that ANR knows about. So that's been mapped. You can't build over there without an Act 250 permit.
Geoffirms, Richard.
Yeah. The green area that looks like the top of a mountain is the top of a mountain. That is the headwater streams. Or headwater area. So basically really steep slope that generates a lot of runoff that's important to the headwater. And then the yellow, we're calling these the fried eggs commonly. That is what's identified as a habitat connector. So the habitat connector is the state resource that needs to be protected. The way that that's been identified is where there's road between tree canopy. So 75% tree cover with a road in the middle becomes habitat connector and now requires an Act 250 permit review under the current draft rule. This would apply to all development that has an impacted area of 200 square feet. So 20 by 10. And not agriculture. Agriculture and logging are expected to be totally exempt from this map. The road rule, this is not exactly this is not exact. This is a model of showing 800 feet off of an existing road. So everywhere that there's this like opaque whitish gray also would require an Act 250 permit review for any development over 200 square feet of impact. So real quick, I want to point out, sorry, I know this is a total repeat for the folks in Rural Caucus, but in the northeast corner of Pittsburgh, you see that yellow habitat connector. That's Sugar Hollow Road. So this is Sugar Hollow Road when you put the habitat connector with the road rule. It's under total jurisdiction of Act 250. So any residential improvement, septic, actually the current rule includes trails, utilities, transportation facilities, so roads and driveways, improvements to existing structures, so homes and new construction in this area would require an Act 250 permit, but not for farms and forestry.
Representative Nelson.
So, go back to that slide.
Yeah.
So if you were unfortunate enough to live there
Mhm.
and had a 5 acre or 10 acre lot or 2 acres. And you wanted to build a little 20 by 30. More than 50 feet from your house to store your tractor and his stuff, you'd have to get an Act 250 permit. Sign me up, that sounds like a deal.
You know, so if you had land along that road and you were protecting the interior forest because you did a lot of forestry management, but along the road, you always hope to punch in a driveway and then let your kids have a single family home, they'll go. You need an Act 250 permit now,
Yeah.
and this goes forward. And we'll point out that this whole road is covered with homes
Yeah.
and driveways already. This isn't like
Dozens.
this is wilderness.
Yeah,
Dozens.
And this is just one example. I think if folks have heard about this, the town of Moortown, just up the road here, is almost entirely covered by this situation.
Most of their town highway network.
Yeah, even some state highways have this scenario under the current rule.
Yeah, Ripton State Highway serves as Main Street, all habitat connector.
So I want to just maybe suggest that we not spend too much time on the road rule.
Right.
Yeah,
Today, anyway. We can
Yeah.
come back to that another day, but just since we're here now and thinking about tier one
Right.
or about.
Yeah.
We're getting to the point.
we're
of how
getting
this
to
all relates.
we're almost gonna wrap up.
Okay.
So to be fair, I wanted to show you an urban center, same map. So this is Rutland Regional Planning Commission map, pink and dark purple shows what could be Act 250 exempt. Green is showing you already conserved and unsuitable for future development land. And we do expect Rutland to go for tier 1A.
Rutland City.
Rutland City of Rutland. So again, so this pink area is what's eligible, maximum land area within the city of Rutland eligible if the LURB approves it. So this is the process created by the LURB, but enabled by statute to receive that tier 1B status, we call it. It's the status of tier 1B. So it starts at the Regional Planning Commission. There is a point in time which the Planning Commission takes the municipality's input, but it's not the municipality's map, the Planning Commission's map. That goes to the LURB. There's a 60-day public hearing process. A high standard of review facilitated by the LURB, which is a political subdivision of the state. And then the LURB will affirm or deny. If the LURB affirms the map, it goes back to the RPC. There's more public hearings at the regional level, and then the RPC adopts it. And then there's another final action by the LURB to affirm or deny. And now the status of tier 1B can be created if the town opted into it.
Tier 1A,
1B,
1B, okay.
if the town opted into it. So Rutland Regional is in that process now. It could conclude by April or May. And at that point, the city of Rutland could be tier 1B.
We'll note that in the Rutland RPC's map and presented to the LURB and their plan, there are some communities that they have said you don't meet the characteristics to be eligible for tier 1B because you're too linear. You don't have streets and neighborhoods. So it's not a given that even Derby Center or Derby, you know, where you have that development would be eligible because
Yeah.
you might not sort of meet a traditional town layout. And so that's another issue we're pointing out, sort of prevents communities from growing in the way they desire. You have to have already existed in the past in order to grow in the future. And that wasn't, that we believe, the sort of intent of this law, which was to allow even rural communities to grow and allow housing where they think it was best to allow that to happen.
So basically, after the map is affirmed by the LURB, then a municipality, just the individual municipality, so in this case, the city of Rutland, could apply for tier 1A status. And there's basically a duplication of that whole process again. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it follows the same theory, which is citizen-led, multiple opportunities for public comment, an extended pre-application period. There's statutory notice requirements. By law, the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets is notified of the request for tier 1A status already. That's already law. so on and so forth. Then if the LURB denies it, it's denied. If the LURB affirms it, it's checked in on every 4 years to make sure that the municipality continues to meet these 9 statutory criteria. So in order to achieve total exemption, you have to meet these 9 statutory criteria. Which starts with having a plan and zoning and sewer, but includes other things such as that are subjective and to be assessed by the LURB, which is like, do you have smart growth principles? Is it consistent with the character of nearby historic districts? So on. So this brings us to the,
All 9 have to be,
these are in law, yeah, these,
all.
yeah, so I linked it there. This is paraphrased, but I linked it so you can read the straight from statute, but these 9 criteria are created by Act 181. And then LURB has sort of put flesh on the bones of this through their Tier 1A guideline, which I also have linked later, which is sort of a much more, they actually even add notice requirements that are not in statute.
I see you're almost done, so why don't we let you
Yeah.
finish and then we'll go back to questions.
Cool. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah,
Chris?
so this all matters because we've set in motion over the last few years, a very large process to determine where we're going to grow in Vermont. And because we need, 30 to 40,000 housing units, that might be a bit ambitious, but we know we have a housing crisis, a shortage. The theory is this would reduce conflict between farms and neighbors in the dense growth areas if we get this right. The Tier 1A areas represent these most dense areas where there's going to be residential, mixed use, commercial, civic, all of these activities that have competing interests for safety, public. They're all taxpayers. They're all property owners. Some of them have employees. Some of them have businesses. If Act 250 is going to be exempt from these areas, who's going to regulate the land use? It sort of falls to the municipality to call balls and strikes, right? If you are looking to grow a hydroponic facility in a greenhouse with lights on 24 hours a day, and then you're next to a childcare center where people are dropping off, kids in the, someone's going to have to determine how to sort of manage these conflicting interests in these most dense areas, which is a teeny part of the state. And that's where we feel that municipalities, if we're moving towards this process where these are the Act 250 exempt areas, here's where we want you to develop. In fact, municipalities are told your responsibility is to grow this many units. Your region needs to grow this many units. Here's where we're investing water and sewer. This is where we have to have some authority to manage those competing uses and treat landowners fairly so they know how to think about their future investments, to think about those conflicts if they're going to have neighborly disputes, so they don't end up on the wrong side of something because the laws aren't clear of how to treat land use evenly among all their taxpayers and property owners. And so that's where we get to this, just in the big picture. Trust me, our members have no desire to see farms leave their community, regulate any more land area than we need to, and frankly, manage these difficult disputes among neighbors and competing land uses. But in some of these areas, like the city of Montpelier downtown, they need to do that. And that's really sort of just the nuts and bolts of why we're here to talk. We're happy to have this, and to also emphasize that since the Supreme Court case, we're not aware of any municipalities, even though they have the authority now to start regulating farming, that have even begun a process or even thought about. So we also just think it's important to be cautious about how we're dealing with this and how quickly we're rushing, because you never know where some other corner is going to present itself that there could be an unintended impact on agriculture in Vermont. And that's certainly not our intent. Why we're bringing this to a very small level through a process that is going to take 2 or 3 more years to play out till we even see we believe, diminished areas where there'll be Act 250 exemption if a municipality seeks to achieve it.
And I can't remember if I said this before, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but regardless of if a municipality goes forward to seek Act 250 exemption, which They might not, it's hard to do, and you might not get what you want at the end of the process. And it's a political process at the local level, right? Like it has to also go through the select board, board of aldermen, you have to have public hearings, et cetera. But whether they do or they don't go for 1A or 1B or neither, the Home Act of 2023 already through state law preempts the density in these areas. So if a municipality has water and sewer, it has to zone 20 units per acre, duplexes, ADUs by right, and more. So regardless of if a municipality gets Act 250 exemption for non-agricultural uses in this area, these are dense. Like they are dense, and over the next 50 years, 10 years, I mean, honestly, we hope 5 years, they will become more dense with more infill and more mixed uses, including residential.
Are we, in theory anyway, able to see, and maybe you've done this exercise, or maybe it's, since it's still, mapping is still a work in progress, not yet, but at some point, we would be able to see how much land is currently being, farmed in what could be a 1A area. And I think you said that like 2% was potentially eligible. That was a new number.
That's a new estimate.
Yeah, which we all know. We know that there's 6 million acres in Vermont total, I think, so we can figure out what 2% of that is. But yeah, do we have any sense of like currently being farmed?
Yeah, within those areas, since they're still changing.
Yeah.
There's not one has been approved yet. It's hard to calculate that, but we do know from the maps, like that Rutland City example, even in the city of Rutland, you can see, I'm just going to go off memory, maybe 15% of Rutland City has already been mapped as conserved, rural, likely agriculture is going on there, and then they're not seeking that exemption in those areas.
Act 250 exemption.
Act 250 exemption for other uses.
Yeah.
So,
But 3 maps are drafted, and before the LURB, there's 8 more to go over the next year. So Washington County, we haven't been able to see. They're still going through a public process and then the map will be drafted. Also, the Agency of Ag knows where all the farms are. We don't. So it would have to be done with we don't, like, municipal zoning doesn't create a farm, and a regional plan doesn't create a farm. The farm designation letter creates it.
Yeah. In the case that brought this forward, obviously, it was determined to be eligible for a farm. And then that which the municipality, they couldn't regulate it, which then preceded the complaints, which then brought the case to the court. And so it's just, we need to be careful and deliberate about how we move this forward to not have more unintended consequences.
Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, a little over. Who had a hand up earlier? John? You?
Could I quickly, I always forget to do this. These are resources about municipal planning. Some of them are FAQs. They're really easy to review. I skipped over the statutory requirements at the municipal level, but if you want to know more, they're here. This is all the resources for Act 181, including maybe the most important one you're maybe the most curious about is this is the map viewer. So you can see the 3 draft maps. And if you know of a farm in your town and you want to look and the map's up there, you can zoom right in, you can check the parcel ID, everything. And then this is the type of development currently in the draft rule that would be subject to Act 250. Again, not agriculture. And then this is more information about where municipal regulatory authorities rest. And that's all. I just want to say that.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Very thorough.
And I'll stop here.
Representative O'Brien?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. So for clarity, you have to become a 1B as the gateway to 1A?
Basically.
Okay. Nice.
And it's the same area that's eligible for one or the other. Or it could be a donut, so.
But you can't go straight to 1A.
You can, but it's why? Yeah.
The 1B process gets approved.
Yeah, the 1B
You gotta
process,
apply
yeah.
after, and
Yeah.
so if you're seeking that exemption, why not get the immediate exemption for housing that exists with that
Right,
before you get the rest? And I think one thing that's really interesting that we're struggling with, this 2-3 year effort that's added all kinds of staff and public meetings and taking tons of time. When we're all said and done, the estimated Act 250 exempt areas might be less than what we currently have under the interim exemptions.
Yeah.
So it begs the question, was this the balance that we were looking for? And for your concerns, are those areas really substantial for the farming community to maybe avoid some of these other nuisance cases that end up in sort of challenges to farming in other areas of the state?
And we're trying to help town officials and Vermonters understand this, but the reason we talked about the road rule is the road rule is in state law. It is not a choice of the municipality. It's not an area mapped through a planning commission citizen process. It is just going to happen. And so the future growth and density and new housing and new commercial and industrial uses in Vermont are being pushed
Gonna
in.
contract to these
They're
areas.
contracting into these very small areas. So the issues that we see happening between farm and non-farm neighbors and in all sorts of other situations, pedestrians and commercial trucking, like combined sewer overflows, like all of the intensity that happens in these dense areas where growth is happening quickly and different uses are competing with each other. Where you have college students and you have safe housing for aging people, like in Burlington. Those things are going to start happening in these smaller areas. And so we're proposing this because we want to plan well for the future. And we want these municipal regulations to be fairly applied in a clear and objective way, regardless of whether you're converting a brewery to a mushroom cultivation operation or backwards the other way, right?
So Samantha, that was my follow-up was on your mushroom example.
Yeah.
Didn't even come up today, but it sounds like, to me, that would be an accessory on-farm business if you started the mushroom themed restaurant. And that has its own sort of municipal zoning exemption or not, right? In this
Right.
case, you can't, Rutland couldn't say, no, you're not doing a mushroom themed restaurant connected to your mushroom farm. But it does have to follow the zoning bylaws.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
So my question is, you have a dairy farm. And kind of the way John was alluding, you change from dairy to mixed use farming enterprise. Vegetable, fruits, vegetable, orchard, whatnot. Would that trigger zoning because it's gone from historic, and of course, our right to farm bill that we passed protects that. It's still agriculture. So let's not pigeonhole the type of farm that it is. But if it's agriculture, if it's growing food, it's growing food, it's growing food.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it comes to this, if it's in this Act 250 exempted area that gets approved and the town decides to add agriculture regulations and that dairy farm is changing some use of its farming, nothing's happened yet. Now they want to add a huge parking lot that is on the corner of an intersection where maybe if that was another type of business, the fire department might say, that's on a corner, we need you to move that 10 feet back. That's what might be, because you're proposing a new use and now an area of the town that does have zoning, that chose to regulate farms, that now has a permit that has these broader public safety concerns.
So, yes, and I have friends that have converted historic, more than 100-year-old dairy farms into mixed vegetable farms, and there's stuff they needed: a wash and pack facility, walk-in coolers, more equipment. They have much more mechanized cultivation compared to dairy. So equipment sheds and safe storage for that stuff. They had employees who park their cars. They have a farm stand where you can buy the mixed vegetables. They put much more land under cultivation. So they might have been building farm roads and driveways and new egress and onto state highway, right? If that was happening in the Act 250 exempt area and the municipal regulation were to apply, they might need to get a permit. Like if they're building a new farm access road that is a transportation facility, if I did that at my house into my property, I would need a municipal permit. I wouldn't have and so that farm also would never need that. But I'm saying, so if this conversion from, if you're talking about historic farm, existing structures, conversion to a mixed enterprise, mixed vegetable farm, if they built stuff and it was in this 2% area, they might need a permit. The municipality might not regulate all of those things. It may or may not require, for example, if you're building 5 new walk-in coolers for vegetable storage, some municipalities require an electrician's stamp before you connect to the utility. Most municipalities don't. So in that situation, they might be required to go through that process just like a homeowner or a different commercial or industrial business would, if that municipality has the regulation. Yeah.
Lipsky?
This has been very helpful, and I appreciate how important you are as a resource set for citizens. And now I'm gonna try to go back in history where the genesis of 181 was originally clothed as a housing and Act 250 reform bill, primarily to meet the needs of the extreme shortage of housing statewide. But, I represent basically in my life most of rural Vermont. It's active in forestry, and we're 76% forested, and maybe another 5 or 6% agricultural. So in all those towns is what is appearing to me, and you've almost alluded to this, and when I've gone to tier 3 hearings, not with you all obviously, but with the LURBs, there's a lot of alarm, and I'm going to use not incendiary words, but the notion of regressive. Rural towns, rural folks are generally, they're not the most affluent towns in the state. They struggle for wages and employment opportunities. But I heard many, many constituents of that, those folks that I feel I represent, even though they may be outside of Lamoille District, alarmed at the cost of an automatic trigger under the road rule, where, an example, a spouse is caring for, who's elderly, dealing with an even older or more struggling partner or spouse, yet they don't want to sell and move into a nursing home. They'd like to gift or provide for their children who want to stay in Vermont land, and maybe it's a 1,400-foot driveway, but they don't have enough money to put wood in their boiler or oil in their tank, and now they're faced with triggering a 32-point hurdle barrier under Act 250 automatic trigger. And this is happening all over rural Vermont. And you uttered the notion that maybe this road rule is causing more problems and for moderate and low income rural Vermonters than doing good. I just want to hear from you articulate leaders of Vermont League of Cities and Towns that maybe is something that the legislature, and the LURB's free and clear. They didn't write the law. We take responsibility for what was voted in, whether we voted against it or we voted for it. But this is what Vermonters are going to have to live Vermonters, many of them cannot afford the burdens of these automatic triggers.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna, I want to hear the answer to that too, but I'm gonna suggest that we wait until we have a different time set aside for discussion of other parts of Act 181, because we are already now 5 minutes into our next testimony.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I thank you for being.
Happy to come back, talk more, happy to keep talking with the Agency of Agriculture, talk with the Farm Bureau, other groups, understand this is an important topic and we want to be good partners and communicators with all the groups.
I would appreciate that. We had two other hands up. If we've got questions about the league's position here, I think that's the most important thing for us to understand. So go ahead, Representative Bartholomew.
I'm just trying to understand, you gave two maps here with colors that I
Yeah.
don't see very well of eligible. So when these are designated, then these maps will change, right? Do I have that right? When you have 1A and 1B are actually designated areas,
Um,
am I missing something?
I mean, I think the answer is no. Actually, the map won't change. Because this is mapping the future land use as future land uses. So downtown center, village center, plan growth area.
What's eligible mean?
Eligible means eligible for tier 1A or 1B.
If you meet all those requirements, you get approved by LURB. The municipality approves it. If they grant you that status.
Yeah.
Now you have Act 250 exemption.
So, but am I still on the Zoom or did I leave it? No, I left it, shoot. So if you look at the Rutland City one, and there's the purple brush down center in the middle, and then there's the pink by the area around it.
See those colors, good.
Yeah,
Those colors I can.
okay, so that's the eligible area. Rutland City won't do this, but they could only seek Act 250 exemption for the downtown part.
The dark purple.
The dark purple. They could seek it for the downtown part plus their new TIF district, right? Which is inside of this whole pink area.
Eligible just sounds like it requires further approval to.
It does, extensive further approval.
So then why wouldn't it potentially change?
So
The question
I
I'm
understand.
getting to though is if we have a whole bunch of environmental refugees coming to Vermont and the towns then want to expand the areas, is there a mechanism to do that? That's my real question.
The current mechanism in law is in the next regional planning process. We advocate in fairness and transparency, they should be able to make a substantial change before then, before the LURB, if they have a local process, statutory process that supports it. And a good reason to make a change in between planning cycles is for the conservation of land for agricultural activity. Like if inside here, someone acquired 6 acres and conserved it and made it undevelopable, it would make sense for Rutland to remove that from Act 250 exempt status and add Act 250 exempt status somewhere else. So, and there are other reasons, like you've had one yourself. So, but right now, this can only be redone, this can only be changed. The tier 1B eligible area, maximum area can only be changed in the next regional plan, which would be
So
in
the
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years.
Short
Yeah.
answer to my question is yes.
The map and the colors, I'm not sure that once something's approved, they're not going to produce a new map.
No,
It says these are the areas that, because these were mapped based on characteristics. Those characteristics aren't changing if you only choose to seek a portion of them for this Act 250 eligible exemption. Maybe there'll be a new map that LURB or someone creates, hopefully, that shows the Act 250 exempt areas that encourages development there, so it doesn't put pressure on the working lands. That's the whole point of this thing. But in the law, it doesn't require anyone to go back and change these maps until it's an 8-year cycle.
Representative Burt.
Yeah, I just want to mention that the land area is about 2% of the. Tell the exact numbers on how much of our land is farmland, it's 17-ish%.
Mhm.
So if you take 2% out of 17, it's a significant thing, you know, to our committee, to our farmers. So I just wanted to point that out. That's, I think, you know, we're wanting to make sure this conversation is done right and come up with a final solution that works well. 2% doesn't sound like much, but 2% of 100, 2% of 17. If it includes a decent amount of farmland, what you're talking about.
12%.
It's almost it's not 17 minus 2, though. Again, like if you look at the Rutland map, inside of that is existing conserved agriculture, like it is being mapped at the same time. So land under conservation, agricultural and forestry uses are being mapped at the same time as land identified for having development potential.
So I think you're saying is that it's less than 2% that's actually farmland in the mapped area.
Oh, yes.
Way,
dramatic,
way,
maybe-
way less.
Maybe, I wish we had that number.
Yeah.
Maybe we can ask the GIS. I mean, my guess is you're talking a fraction of a percent, not even a percent. And that it's also clear that that land, even the one that's characterized as the place for growth, still can allow farm. You know,
Yeah.
it might just have these competing interests that need to be weighed, you
Yeah,
know, and then so could the areas that aren't currently farming that maybe are in tier 2 or 3, those could be new farms, you know, cleared and land and so on. The point is well taken, that this is very important for this committee. And I think that we've heard from the Agency of Agriculture, it's very hard for them to agree giving up any square inch of land anywhere in the state
Yeah.
and saying you can't farm there. And we completely agree with that sentiment. And that's why our statement was preference, and it says in the most densest part of your backyard in Burlington on 10 feet, you should be able to farm that land,
grow food.
grow food, have
Yeah.
have hens, and you know, so
Yeah,
completely understand.
So just one last thing I want to clarify, and then we'll say thank you, and you can head out, and we may ask you to come back if we feel like it would be helpful. And if you feel like it would be helpful, certainly let me know. The agency had in their proposal, and we heard them say, I think that they had negotiated this, or they had worked on it with you. It may not even be relevant now to your proposal, but increasing in the wraps from the current $2,000 level to a higher number. Is that a concern of yours at all now, or are you saying, nope, we're not even worried about that? All we're suggesting is that we use this tier 1A.
yeah, so in the back and forth with the agency, we got, you know, like every good healthy negotiation, closer and closer to each other. And in a situation where it was 1 acre farms subject to municipal regulation, they asked for it's 1 acre or as decided by the secretary. And so in that situation, that wrap threshold is much more important to us, whether it's the animal, the intensity of the farming, or the revenue. In a world where we're regulating, again, based not on the intensity of the farming, if we go back to the very beginning, not the intensity of the farming activity or how much money they make or how big the farm is, but what's happening in that zoning district and the density of that zoning district, that dollar figure is far less important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel like they were trying to achieve the same concerns by saying, okay, these really
Yeah.
small farms that don't make a lot of money, they're probably going to be in these same areas.
Yeah.
And we said, we think so.
Yeah.
We think it's much easier for the farmers to understand and all the other landowners in your work and the Supreme Court cases and the neighborly disputes to say, let's just do it this way.
Yeah.
And so it's the same goal. It's just a different way to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the extra time.
Yeah.
Sorry to whoever
Very
was
important.
waiting. Thank you.
We will, we'll be digging into this in the next couple of days.
Awesome.
So now, just before we break, Glenn, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. And we're going to just switch gears for a minute here. Next week, we're the committee is planning to visit Randolph. And I thought it might be helpful, Glenn, just for you to give us an update, tell us what we're going to see, and anything else that might be easier to discuss here rather than there.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Durfee. So yes, I'm extremely excited to welcome you to the Randolph campus next week. It's Thursday at 9:30, I think, piggybacking off of another visit you'll have at Vail. But it's a chance to see the 1787 butchery, which is our new state-of-the-art facility to support teaching in the areas of butchery. And so it's a great chance to see some of that equipment and space. Just a few notes to prepare you. So this is a cooled space. So even though we do heat it a bit in the wintertime, it's warmer than outdoors most days. It's still a bit chilly, so you'll need to wear your coat. We keep that cold for food safety standards, of course. And then we'll have an opportunity once we're in the space, hopefully, to not only see the equipment in space, but to spend a little bit of time. We can see some of the meat products and cuts that have happened from our last training, and perhaps even have a chance to sample some things if the bacon makes it out of the smoker. So fingers crossed, but looking forward to seeing all of you in person, meeting our director, Dr. Demetrius Reed, and having a good conversation.
Great. Can you say anything about how the space is being used currently? What programs are running? I know that the university is in the process of ramping up a new set of credentialed classes.
Absolutely, yes. I have a PowerPoint ready if you don't mind. I can share a bit more information on that. It's a pretty exciting time.
Sure, yeah. We've only got a few minutes. We need to be on the floor at 3, Glenn, so we'll see whatever we have time to see.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go very quickly, and I'm just going to skip through to the key points. But yes, so I'm with the Center for Ag at Vermont State University. And I think the 2 key points I want to focus on with your time is really focusing on the actual activity that's developed since the last time we were together. And so our goal has been to set up programming in the areas of agriculture, food, and forests. We're a workforce center, so all of our activities are geared towards getting folks ready to hit the workforce, upskill, reskill, and that sort of thing. And so 2 areas of activity since we last connected. The first is with our certificate programs. And so this has been a long undertaking, but the goal has been to identify areas of opportunity where we can provide work-ready skills that are specific to needs in the industry. So we have where we see either a current void or a projected workforce shortage in the future, or as well as areas of opportunity where there's not already solid instruction within the state or even sometimes within the region to support those workforce needs. So based off of a lot of internal and external conversations with industry stakeholders, our full advisory committee, as well as our president and chancellor, we arrived upon these 3 certificate programs as being a key opportunity for the university and for the state. And so this is regenerative grazing and livestock systems, which is focused on the growing need for things like grass-fed beef, looking at management practices that are land-based as opposed to intensive-based, and looking at all of the systems that go into making that successful financially as well as ecologically. We're looking at the Applied Meat Processing and Butchery Arts Certificate. This is geared towards getting quality butchers, folks who can handle the meat safely, who can create value-added meat products, who can process meats at a variety of levels. So gaining that sort of art and science skill to be successful therein. And then lastly, a sawmill operations certificate. And so this is geared towards that sweet spot in terms of getting folks who are competent in terms of being able to mill lumber, sort, grade, have a general understanding, be able to operate equipment, as well as have some business savvy. So these, again, are all work-ready certificates. We're excited to see these launch in the fall of 2026. These are all modeled as hybrid certificates, meaning that their lecture components of the coursework within the certificates is taught remotely. And then with most of the courses, there's an intensive where students would come on site or with industry partners and spend 4 to 5 days learning some of those hands-on intensive skills. So we're excited about this. It's a pretty good value proposition for students, aligns with some of the industry needs specifically. And it's one of those things that has a lot more flexibility than some traditional programming. So you can take a one-off course, you could go at your own pace, or you could cram this in as short as 2 semesters. So that's a little bit about the certificates. We're currently offering a number of short course trainings as well. These trainings are everything from distilling, welding, wetlands delineation, artificial insemination of dairy cattle, just again, trying to fill niches of opportunity within the state where there's a workforce need, sometimes a homesteader need as well. And of course, we're incorporating trainings within the new 1787 butchery. So I just want to, if I've got 1 more minute left, or do you need to leave, Dave? Do I need to leave?
No, we're good.
Okay, awesome. I know I'm rushing through here, but I want to just spend a few minutes on the butchery. And so first of all, to say thank you. This project was a tremendous undertaking that happened. We broke ground, so to speak, or renovation started back in the spring of last year, were completed over the summer and into the fall. And then we began holding some of our trainings in the winter. And so this was truly a monumental undertaking financially. I'm very grateful for the support of the legislature in terms of being able to support this project. I think it's a really great example of multiple funding sources identifying a shared opportunity and then putting money to support that and make it happen. And so we had a legislative appropriation that covered about 1/3 of the cost. We had a working lands grant. We had a CRRP grant, USDA NEFA grant. We had alumni support, and then we had some core dollars from the sale of some of our farm equipment. So all in was about $1.2 million invested to create this state-of-the-art meat processing facility. And so started with some design work. We're very fortunate with our meat facility director, lots of experience in terms of creating a really comprehensive design. It's not a huge space, but it's by no means a simple space. Very complicated HVAC systems, complicated equipment, very tight set points with environmental controls. So having to make that space work was critical. So over the course of construction, we were able to renovate that space completely, make it a food safe, wash down ready space, bring in lots of industry representative equipment. So anything to cut meat, grind it, process it. This is a smoker here and a grinder in the front, but all of the equipment that you need in terms of being able to safely and effectively butcher and process. And so since that time, the space has come online. We've been excited to offer various trainings in advance of our certificate going live in the fall. And so these are often focused on different animals. So we've had a pork training, a poultry and lamb training, a beef training, and a sausage making training at this point. And so these have been well received, and we're excited to see the enrollments that have been happening. And through these trainings, we've gotten some of our initial interest for enrollment in the full certificate program. And so the space is absolutely fantastic, leverages audio-visual equipment as part of the NEFA grant funding, just an ability for folks to get hands-on in a safe way and in a way that truly represents what we want to see in our butchery industry. So with that, I know I tried to speed through, but I just wanted to, again, thank you all for your time. Appreciate being able to give you an intro and look forward to talking with you more when you have your tour stop next week.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, you timed that perfectly.
Thank you.
And I think if when we're there, we will ask questions and look forward to seeing it in person.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.